Welcome to Off the Wall. My name is Trey. Thank you so much for taking the time to check out the show this week, whether you're watching on YouTube, listening Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Appreciate you for being here. We've got a really good show for you this week. We'll dive into some IFL, AF1, and NAL action. And we got a great interview with one of my personal favorite arena football players of all time, EJ Burt. We talk about his playing days with the Orlando Predators back in the 2000s. He was most recently head coach for the Orlando Predators the past couple of seasons, so we touch on that. But he came on because he has a new podcast called Arena Goat Talk, which is linked in the description below. So go check that out. He's had some really awesome interviews so far and kind of dove into the origin of that and why he started it. So a really fun interview that we'll get to in just a moment. But before we get to that, it's plug time. Please make sure you're following us on all of our socials at Off the Wall FB. F as in foot, B as in ball, Off the Wall FB, Instagram, X, Twitter, TikTok, Blue Sky, all the things and stuff that's also in the description. So go follow us on all those and come say hi, come get involved in the conversation. If you're watching on YouTube, hello. Please make sure you're subscribing to the channel and liking the video as well. Share it with a friend that you think might like it, and share it with a friend you think might hate it. Let's get spicy. Let's see what happens. But if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please make sure you're also rating the show. So go to the show page, like the episode, rate it 5 stars, and share it with a friend as well. It helps the page grow and helps this thing continue to grow upward as arena and indoor football season continues to trudge on, and we're entering the mid-season, which is super exciting, and we're starting to see some teams' identities really take shape. We're starting to see some teams, we're not sure if they're good or bad. We got some teams that we know they're good. We've got some teams, unfortunately, we know they're bad. So we'll dive into all that after the interview with Coach Burt. So let's not waste any more time. Here's EJ Burt. All right, on the show this week, we have one of my favorite arena football players growing up. He played defensive line for multiple teams, but most notably the Orlando Predators, and he was the head coach for the Orlando Predators for the past couple of seasons, and he is the host of the new podcast, Arena Goat Talk. It is EJ Burt. Coach Burt, appreciate you taking time to hop on the show. How are things going in your world?
Oh, everything's going good. Just staying busy and appreciate you having me on first off. But
Yeah,
just staying busy. I have, different things going on with the Arena Goat Talk, the
yeah.
podcast. I do different youth programs, flag football and other things. So just staying active in the community, is pretty much what I'm doing right now.
Love that. And you're in Orlando like as your full-time home, right?
Yep, I live here.
That's awesome.
Been living here ever since I came to play for the Preds. I'm from Ohio, so
Yeah.
I got a taste of this warm weather and said I ain't going
Uh-huh.
there.
You said absolutely not doing it. So tell us a little bit about your football journey that led you to arena football and how you kind of got involved with it.
So, I'm from Ohio, Akron, Ohio. So in coming up, football's always been a thing. I didn't even want to play football at first until my mom forced me to play one year, and then I got a chance to hit somebody else, and then I was like, you know what, I love this sport.
Right.
So, but playing it and growing up, and all my brothers played. I'm the youngest of 8 boys.
Oh,
So
wow.
we all played football. And so growing up, football has always been my thing. And then once I got to high school, you know, I was playing football, but I didn't take my grades serious.
Mm,
So, I wasn't no troublemaker, but I was a goofball, not taking that stuff serious, thinking all I need is football.
yeah.
School's just in a way. And so by the time I got, to my senior year, I realized how bad my grades were when, colleges were like, you know what, look at those grades. Nah, we can't offer you, I'm getting offers pulled and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
I ended up going to Akron U for a year because I was on academic probation. And then
Mm,
after a year, um, in talking to the clearinghouse or whatever it was called, they said, "Hey, if you stay in Division 1, you get 3 years of football, and you get 3 years of eligibility." And I'm like, "Okay, I didn't play, but
yeah.
whatever. However, the guidelines go, if I stayed D1, I would have had 3 years. They said if you go to Division 2, you get 4 years of eligibility. I'm like, looks like I'm going D2.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so that's how, I ended up knowing somebody at West Liberty, which is where I ended up going. So I went there for my 4 years, two-time All-American, two-time Player of the Year, and all that stuff. So that was all good. And then I had my NFL prospects, but um, not enough to really get drafted. I almost got, in talking to a team, like I think it was the Steelers, it was between me and a guy from Penn State. And
Mm,
they're like they ended up picking him instead. And it's like, whatever,
right.
you sit there and cry about it, you move on. And so from
Right.
there, how did I end up in arena? So after that, I ended up going and coaching. I was coaching in college for a
Oh.
year. So I had to take a year off just coaching college. And then during that year, I had a buddy, from guys just kind of passing, oh, I hear about you, or hey, you signed my buddy, that whole kind of deal.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting a look at the Cape Fear Wildcats, AF2 and the Deuce.
Yeah.
So Mike New was a person who kind of saw my tape and kind of, told Coach Siegfried about me. And so I ended up there, and that's the year I had 27 and a half sacks in a year. And so from there, I had a bunch of NFL teams coming back around.
Uh-huh.
So towards the end of that season, that's when I'd have a game Friday. I'd fly out Sunday to an NFL team for a workout. And if that didn't work out, then, sometimes I'd have two workouts in a week. So
Wow.
I fly out Monday or fly out Sunday, work out Monday, fly out Monday from that place to the next place Tuesday, come back, practice the rest of the week, play a game that Saturday, and then start the whole process again. So, it was like a dream come true, but I didn't get the
Right.
contract that I wanted. So, but I was getting the NFL looks. And so
Right. Yeah.
from there, I ended up going to Orlando. So
Hmm.
the whole process with Orlando was, you know, after that year, defensive player of the year, all those sacks and the records and everything, teams were signing everybody else but me because they were saying I was too small. So that whole process, I'm like, man,
Yeah.
guy that you just signed, I have like 200% more sacks, like or whatever. You
Yeah.
got one sack, I got 27 and a half. And
Yeah.
so I went through that whole process. And then talking to Jay, I ended up coming down here on a 2-day workout. I was still living in Fayetteville, North Carolina at the time. And so Jay says, hey, you come down, you have 2 days to impress us, to earn a contract. And so, he said, if you think you're good enough to make this team, pack to stay. And I loaded up my little Corolla. I had a Toyota Corolla back then.
Yeah.
It was real small, but whatever. I loaded up,
You
came,
made it work. Yeah.
yeah. So I literally got off the highway, went to practice, and after warm-ups, they put me on, some of their best linemen.
Uh-huh.
One,
Yep.
like, oh, I don't get to warm up, nothing. Is this whatever?
Nope.
We want to see what you got right off the rip. And it's one of the moments where you sink, you sink, or you float, like whatever, you
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
into it. So after that first day, they said, here's a contract. I'm like, all right, that's what I came down here for.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I ended up down here.
That's incredible. What you mentioned something about Coach Siegfried, and as I was doing some research, I didn't realize that you played for Coach Siegfried, and then last year you had the opportunity to coach against him with
Yeah.
the with West Texas. What was
Yeah.
that like, kind of going up against the guy that gave you your initial break into the game?
That was it was interesting, but we're both competitive, so
Yeah.
there ain't no friends while we're coaching against each other. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
Oh man, I so appreciate we do that after the game.
Yeah. Exactly.
Actually,
Yeah.
and with me, I get so focused, like when it comes to things, like I don't we can talk afterwards. I don't want all
Yeah.
that right now. Don't
Yeah. Right.
So
Yeah.
that's how we were. So it was just a competitive thing. Like, it was cool, but at the same time, I want to beat you.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not caught in this moment of, oh, so nice to coach against my old coach. Nah, I'm trying to
Yeah.
beat my old coach. We could talk afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
And he's the same way. He was competitive too, because we talked afterwards. Because during it, we're not friends. We're not nothing.
Nope.
Well, we're
No.
playing, but afterwards, at the little pre or post game um, ceremonies or parties or whatever, that's when we talked. And it was like, all right, we can let our guards down and we can talk a little bit now.
Yeah.
So, but
Now we're friends again. Yeah.
yeah, so that was it was cool. Like I said, it was in the moment. Don't ask me about how I felt. Nah, I'm
Uh-uh.
in.
Well, you guys split the series last year, so maybe we'll have to see part three in the future sometime to see who wins
I,
that tiebreaker
I,
in the
I
future.
I'd love to. I'd love
Yeah.
to.
You mentioned getting 27 and a half sacks. That's an insane number in AF2. What was it like was it a 14 game season or 16 game season?
It was 16, I believe. So
16?
we were 14 and 2.
Yeah. Okay.
And it was actually 29 and a half, but they didn't, whatever. They didn't count one team didn't count my
A
sack.
short
It was an away game. I had 2 sacks and they
that's
I don't know
that's
if they,
convenient. Yeah.
yeah, they gave me tackles for
That
loss instead of sacks. Like, no, them sacks, but whatever. It
uh-huh.
is what it
Yeah.
is.
Regardless, that's an insane number. What was it about the game that made you be able to adapt so quickly and be able to, gather up some of those stats right off the rip?
This the arena game is built for some people. Some people
Hmm.
can adjust right away.
Yeah.
Some people may take a year or two to kind of to figure things out. But this game was kind of more tailored, at least from the defensive side, for my style of play. Because I was known for my quick get off and good with the hands, and so
Yeah.
and then going off the motion, man, I kind of figured out how to time up the snaps with the motion guy.
Yeah.
Kind of got a philosophy to that, and it worked for me. And through the years, my whole deal was to try to make that motion man work against you as an offense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weapon for you, but it's a weapon for me too.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
if I'm having a good game right then and there, you have to figure something out, and that helps the DBs out on the back end. And so, my whole deal is just make that motion man a weakness. And
Right.
that's kind of how I approached it.
Yeah, and those Predators teams from the early to mid 2000s, those were very defensive, physical teams. Like you're talking about yourself, Doug Miller. We're talking some big boys on the line that were getting it done. So to hear you say like you were able to, time some things out and make some immediate impacts, it makes sense because Orlando wasn't really participating in a bunch of 70 to 70 games. It was some low scoring affairs because the defense wasn't having it.
Yeah, that's just how we were built. Our locker room was just like a bunch
Yeah.
of dogs that were just everybody's hungry for sacks. Everybody's hungry. Like it's just you get us together where we might be fighting with each other, with each other and stuff like that. But we're all
Yeah.
brothers. But it was just like you put a bunch of guys together that want the sacks. They want the accolade. We want the
Yeah.
same thing, and it'll work out that once we get on the field, we end up working together because one thing it was always true, but it was one of the things D lineman you don't want to hear. They say your best rush should be somebody else's sack.
Uh,
So
yep.
you beat or do clean, the quarterback sees you, steps up and runs the other way, and
Yeah.
he gets a sack, and you're mad, and then
Uh,
So then they're trying to prove that they're better. So they try to have a better play the next time. And then
yeah.
it's just a competition. You know what I mean? It's just
Right.
I chalk it up to having great teammates and great, guys with the same goals, and we're just all hungry and making each other better. And the guys on the back end make you better as well.
Yeah.
It's slowing up the motion, have a quarterback afraid to throw the ball because he's afraid of getting picked off. So he
Right.
hold on to it for an extra second, and then we get there.
Yeah. That's where my head was going as you were talking about this was like it helps when you have Kenny McIntyre and Damon Mason on the back end to,
Yeah.
cause that extra second of pause. Because
Hmm.
like you said, it makes them think like, oh, I don't want to throw there. 28's over there.
Yep. Yep.
So
So you,
yeah, so you're helping them, they're helping you. It works for everybody.
exactly, and kind of Tampa was kind of built the same way as well.
Uh-huh.
So I always joke that kind of like the same DNA. As far as the build from the Tampa team is the same build for the Orlando
Right.
team. So when we play each other, we're like damn near mirror images of each other, but we're trying to tear each other's heads off.
Yeah. So I want to talk Ironman.
Yep.
So the getting adjusted to playing Ironman ball, that had to be quite an adjustment. On your show Arena Goat Talk, you had John Moyer on not too long ago, and talking about lining up on both sides of the ball, and you're wanting to get a sack on the guy who's guarding you, but then the roles are flipped, and the guy
Yeah.
who was guarding you is trying to get a sack on you, and so it was kind of like a mini one-on-one battle
Yes.
within the bigger battle. Like
Yeah.
tell me about playing Ironman and what that was like.
So, yeah, so you had to play both sides. And so my journey with the Ironman, I had to have a coach who knew how to adjust to me because I was smaller.
Uh,
And so at first year, Cape Fear, they were really trying to, I slid a lot, so I'd slide down and help the center out, creating like a zone, me in the center versus the Mac and the nose guard. I did a
mhm.
lot of that in Cape Fear as I was learning. Sometimes I'd stay man up, but I'm a smaller, I was a smaller guy. I was probably about
Yeah.
240, 245-ish, somewhere around there. So as I was trying to learn how to block, it made it tougher. I started to figure it out towards the end of the year, but it was tougher. And
Mhm.
so once I got to Orlando, yeah, I had the 27 and a half sacks. But, if you want to play, you got to learn how to block. Because back
Yeah.
then, there was no defensive lineman as specialists. You never had that.
Right.
As the game evolved, you started to see that. But back then, no, you had to learn how to block. And so with that whole process, when I got to Orlando, it's like, yeah, you can rush the passer, but we got to fine tune this blocking thing. And so it had Fran Papasadero, God bless the dead. He was the head coach when I first got down here, and he worked with the line. And so I I coach this way partially because of how he did me.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
it worked. Because it's literally you're a man. You either figure this thing out or you're going to get cut. Figure this thing out. And so,
Fair.
yeah, I was beating everybody on the pass rush end, but as soon as I had to block, I had to figure out how to block the big guys. So
Yeah.
all that beautiful kick step and heavy, 45 degree, that doesn't work for me because I was a smaller guy.
Yeah.
So Fran would line up the biggest, strongest guys, the Ernest Allens, Doug Miller, especially those two. He's
Yep.
teaming those guys up on me. And I had to figure out how to sit down on the bull rush and basically shorten up my kick step.
Hmm.
I pretty much had to short set everybody, and I had good enough feet to try to fight and battle from there.
Yeah.
So that first year, the way they rotated me, which that's one thing that I kind of miss coaching now is there's a way to rotate the guys that puts you at an advantage. And if the other coach does not know how to do it, it becomes a disadvantage.
Right.
So as I was trying to learn how to block, when you start the quarter, if you start the quarter as a player, a two-way guy, you start the quarter, once you come out, you can go back in. If you do not start the quarter and say in the middle of the quarter, they put me in on defense, and then I come out right after that series, I'm burnt. I can't go back in.
Yeah.
And so there's coaches that didn't understand that, and then there was coaches that did. Jay understood that, Fran
Oh
understood
yeah.
that, Markham and those guys, they understood that. And so, even nowadays, going into last year, I was trying to capitalize on that, but it was a mix up, with the way things
Right.
were
Yeah.
going last year. We'll get
Yeah.
into that a whole nother time. But
Yeah. Yeah.
but back to, learning how to block, Fran put the biggest, strongest guys on me, and I had to figure it out or I was going to get cut. So I
Right.
eventually I figured out, like I said, I had to short set everybody. And I had to learn that I would prefer the big, strong guys because the guys like me and the big guys that can move who gave me the biggest issue blocking. Because you're trying to
Right.
sit down on a bull rush and all of a sudden they hit you with a spin and your feet are all off. And so, but
Yeah.
teams would actually take their biggest, strongest guys because I ended up playing full games, literally from beginning to end. Ironman, I played every offense, defense.
Yeah.
I ended up playing that, towards the end of the Ironman era. And so teams would try to put the big, strong guys on me thinking it would wear me down. That way, when I get the defense, I don't have anything left.
Uh-huh.
I was a little Energizer bunny. That didn't affect me at all. It would affect me more if I'm pass blocking and I'm giving up a sack, and then I'm thinking about how I gave up that sack, and then I get on defense and I'm like still thinking about it. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was fun times because it was literally like you had to you had to figure this out, and you're trying to get the sacks, and then you're trying to protect your lead, like me and John
Right.
were talking. So
Yeah.
that definitely made it such a competitive thing because you're just like, oh, I got to figure out this block thing. He's not getting a sack on me.
Nope.
I'm gonna get 3 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and you're not getting nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the mind games are something that, and I guess the strategy, like you mentioned with Coach Gruden, is what people didn't really realize about it. Like a lot of things were very intentional.
Hmm.
Like you said with the rotations. And speaking of Coach Gruden, obviously a legendary quarterback in the game, great coach, winning championships as a quarterback, as a coach. What was it like playing for him in particular?
Um, somewhat intimidating, and I only say that because with me, um, when I first came to Orlando, it was kind of like I had my mind set up. I want to go to the NFL, right?
Right.
And so when you see everybody kind of joking around, right? And so you see, you know, because the way Jay ran the environment was a fun environment, but everybody was
Right.
getting their work in. You did crack jokes and then have fun. The crack jokes, and then we're doing one-on-ones, and it's competitive. So it can go from jokey to you gave up a sack, or you got burnt, or as a receiver you dropped the ball, and then you look at Jay, and Jay goes from laugh ha ha ha.
Ain't
He
funny
gives you that
anymore.
look. That part of it made it, somewhat intimidating. Like, but for me, I was so when I played, like I told him, he didn't realize 'cause I didn't talk as much back then. Uh,
Right.
like I didn't want to talk to nobody. I'm here
Yeah.
to go to the NFL. I'm here to win a championship. I'm here to win. Save them jokes for another time. When I'm in the mood, then joke with me.
Yeah.
But the fact that I didn't talk came across as I was shy, which a lot of times I was shy, but when it came to this football thing, I took serious.
Yeah.
You know what I
Turned it
mean?
on. Yeah.
And it wasn't that I was like a person that was so serious you can't talk to when it's all said and done. But when I'm locked in, I'm locked in.
Yeah.
When I played, I'm locked in. Don't, especially on game day, don't crack a joke. Don't look me in my eye. That's how
Nope.
I was. And so, but being
Yeah.
in the environment with Jay, like I said, it was a fun environment, but you had a bunch of guys who want the same thing you want. So if you go into that environment and just start joking around and not getting your stuff done, on top of Jay saying something to you or whatever, the other guys in the locker room would be on you.
Yeah.
And then you had Reggie Miller. God bless the dead Reggie Miller. Or not Reggie Miller, Reggie Lee. What am I saying?
Yeah.
Reggie Lee, who was a lineman. He was probably one of the funniest dudes you will ever meet in your life, but his jokes would cut deep.
Oh no.
You know, um, I remember the first time he said something to me, it cut deep, and I was like, "Who you talking to?" So, are we? I'm not a big cusser, but are we allowed to cuss?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, please.
It's something he said that it really cut deep. I'm like, for a split second, I was like, should I punch him?
Yeah, right.
And so I remember we played Dallas Desperados, and to the beginning of the season, I think I had 2 sacks my rookie year. Then I had 1 sack. So going into it was like the third or fourth game, I didn't do anything because it was like Dozell getting rid of the ball.
Yeah, yeah.
You ain't touching it, but I didn't
No.
really know all that stuff. So you're coming across him and you don't touch the quarterback. I didn't touch the quarterback, and I don't know if we won or lost that game, but I went from everybody all eyes on me getting sacks to I didn't touch the quarterback because the quarterback was getting rid of the ball quick.
Right.
And Reggie Lee says, after the game, he's like, "Damn, EJ, for that shit you put on the field, you could have stayed your ass home." And I was like, I don't even know you. that's,
That's so good.
but the thing that was his personality. One,
Yeah, right.
he would get you to play better, but it was no holds barred.
Yeah.
Either you figure it out, it was that kind of environment. Like it was joking, but if you didn't do good, and that joking environment can go from I like these jokes to now all
Yeah.
of a sudden you the joke, and they turn on you, and it's like, all right.
It was fun when it was someone else. Yeah.
Yeah, and then, like I said, with me, I was already didn't talk a whole lot. So
Yeah.
I think for like the next couple weeks, I didn't say hi to nobody.
Nope.
I mean, you was never gonna talk to me like that ever
Uh-uh.
again.
No.
So that's the kind of environment that
Yeah.
we're in. So being in that environment for years, it kind of set the tone. Have fun, but um, be serious about your craft because
For sure.
it can flip on you in one play.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. Well, yeah, that culture obviously worked for the Predators, and eventually you transitioned into coaching yourself. And in arena football, you see a lot of coaches are typically, offensive minded, a lot of quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers in the league. But you being a defensive guy, how how does that change things for you being a head coach in arena football? Does that shift your perspective a little bit, or how does that work?
It it definitely made me study the game a little bit more.
Uh-huh.
Um, I think, the way I approached it is it's about the game. It's not about having the best defense. It's
Yeah.
making sure this whole team clicks. And I had good mentors, which was Jay Gruden, Les Moss,
Hmm.
Pat O'Hara, Coach Hohensee. These guys, Brett Muncie, even those guys, like I'd reach out to them to say,
Yeah.
what kind of players did you recruit? All right. They give you that bit of information. All right, Jay. I remember you used to rotate me like this. Was I thinking right when I did this, this, and this? Like I'm not afraid to seek mentorship, not
Yeah.
afraid to be wrong. You gotta
Right.
try different things and find out if it works. But I credit it to God putting good people in my life to mentor me,
Yeah.
to put me in the right position, and then just like I said, just not being afraid to try different things. And I think some instincts kind of kick in where things that I didn't know that I knew
Right.
as I'm doing things, and then I'm kind of comparing what I think I know to in my talks with them, they're like, oh yeah, yeah, no, EJ, you were right. And thinking that way and doing this, or you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
then you're like, okay, I have some good instincts when it comes to certain things.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then, like I said, if there's stuff that I didn't know or stuff that I was kind of messing up on, I wouldn't. I'm not afraid to take it to them and see how they feel about it, and
Right.
they could check me if I'm wrong. And even with my staff, when I'm talking to Coach Rickerson, sit or Coach Manuel, like, hey, was I wrong in this? Check.
Right. Yeah.
Don't be afraid to speak and say, hey, nah, you was wrong
Yeah.
on that one. You know what I mean? Just having that kind of mentality, I think, helps.
Yeah. Yeah. You're talking Gruden, Moss, Hohensee, like that's a pretty good crew to be able to bounce some questions off of. I think even back in the 2000s, that was you're looking at 40 plus years of experience between the three of them. So yeah, that you could have done worse with the crew you were bouncing questions off of.
Yeah, like I said, God put me in an awesome position to have those guys in my life
Yeah.
to be able to help me out along the way, and
Right.
open them up to even be receptive to that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
people will be so intimidated by Jay or some of the other guys to even ask them questions. You know what I
Right. Yeah.
mean? And the fact that they're open up to say, you know what, nah, EJ's cool. Um, I can help him out or whatever. But
For
I think it
sure.
also goes into the way you always carried yourself. If I walked around acting like a clown all the time, they wouldn't want to help me out. But the
Right.
fact that
Yeah.
I carried myself professionally the whole time helps as well.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely maintaining those relationships and maintaining that network along the way certainly helps there.
Yeah.
Well, heading into 2025, being an Orlando Predators fan growing up, I was excited for how things were shaping up. I thought you had one hell of a roster being developed. Things didn't work out quite as expected heading into the season. From your perspective, what was that like being able to build a really great roster, a really great group of guys on both sides of the ball, but just kind of seeing it not
Yeah,
really come to fruition.
very disappointing. There's nothing you could do.
Right.
Things happen for a reason. God has a bigger plan at the end of the day. But it definitely was like, we're getting out of training camp, getting ready for week one, and bam, that happens. And it's like
Yeah.
there was no signs that this was coming or whatever. So, when it
Right.
happened, it was just, it was just disappointing. And then, having to talk to the guys about it because we were all, championship ready. We were championship minded, and that
Yeah.
was our goal. And no one was going to take that from us. We just had that mentality going into camp, and the guys were so hungry to get into the
Hmm.
season, and talking to all the guys and stuff in the off season. Like, I'm just making sure if you ain't about this championship, don't come because this
Right.
this
Yeah.
this is what I'm doing here. Don't come in here and be a goofball. Goofball, you could be a goofball outside the football field, but I'm here to win a championship and nothing
Right.
less. So,
Yeah.
the mentality, the standard was set. So we were just ready to go. And like I said, for that to happen, it was just like bam. It was just shocked everybody, and still had thoughts about it right now, but everything's still in the works. So
Yeah.
there was nothing else to really speak on at this point. But
For sure.
we were ready to go.
Yeah. Just talking with some of the guys heading into the season, and even since then, they were like, "Man, we had quite a crew," and it's one of those big what ifs of like, "Man, what could have happened?" For first time since 2001, it could have brought it home to Orlando, but we'll see what happens in the future.
Yeah.
We'll see how that ends up working out. But let's talk about Arena Goat Talk, the new
Okay.
podcast that you created. Tell me about the podcast itself and the inspiration behind it, and what kind of made you jump into it.
So I was thinking about it for a while now, but in talking to, old teammates, a couple of the other guys, us old school guys, we all kind of
Hmm.
had the same idea. We're all like, we got stories to tell, and we got knowledge we want to share. And so
Yeah.
it's like, you know what? I did, I got to a point where I don't want to think about stuff anymore. Like if it pops in my head, I'm diving in
Yeah.
and figuring this thing out. And it kind of happened like as soon as, our whole deal with the Preds kind of happened. I was like, all right,
Hmm.
time for me to just go ahead and jump into it. So, the whole idea was to one, connect the old school with the new school, right?
Yeah.
So you got a bunch of guys from years past, Hall of Famers, guys who helped put this game together, and flourished through the years and did things for this to make sure that this thing has been able to last as long as it has. One, they got stories that can be an inspiration to the guys nowadays,
For sure. Yeah.
right? And I try to add in things that, like the last one with Hunkie, him doing kick return.
Yeah.
Explain what he was thinking when he was doing kick return. That'll help a guy nowadays that's watching it. Like, all right, yeah,
Yeah.
you know,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and so it helps give them kind of a roadmap to success.
Hmm.
Game is built a certain way, so why not take tidbits from a guy who's kind of built like you, their play styles kind of like you, kind of take from them. Like, nowadays everything's and people are so accessible. You're
Right. Yeah.
watching, Hunky watch, you're watching, or you say you see him on a podcast and you're like, all right, he's kind of similar to me. Man, you can go to YouTube and watch some of his films, right?
Yeah.
Then you can find somebody on social media possibly if they got it, and you
Yeah.
can kind of reach out to that guy. Man, hey, Hunky, I'm a fan of yours. I think your game's kind of like mine. Can we talk? See if you can help me out with my game. Like that's
Yeah.
the whole premise behind it. And so,
Yeah.
just kind of diving into it again, just trying to connect the old school with the new school. Because like even coaching nowadays, I felt like there was more of that needs to happen. There's a lot of um I don't know if disconnect's the word, but it felt like disconnect is the word I want to
Yeah.
use.
Yeah. 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 Go with
The
it.
guys didn't connect, not through anything intentional. They didn't connect with the guys from the past. Maybe they didn't
Yeah.
know about certain guys. With me, like back in the day, um, once I got into playing, here's an example. But kind of years apart. And so as I got into arena football, as I got to my rookie year, and I'm doing good, leading the league in sacks and all that stuff, and then I'm watching film on other guys, and I realize I'm very similar to my play style, body style to Sam Hernandez.
Yeah.
Hernandez is one of the goats of pass rush.
Oh yeah. He's so good.
Yeah, I'm trying to get. I'm going to have him on a podcast here pretty.
Nice. Okay.
So, but I found out, I my game's similar to his, right? And so through the years, we played against each other, whatever. If we could kind of connect, this is before social media, so it's harder to
Right. Yeah.
connect. But nowadays, if say Andre Sale finds out that his game is similar to Clint Dozell or something like that,
Yeah.
they can kind of connect, trying to find a ways to connect those two. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah. Yeah.
watch the film on this guy. All right, you see what he can do. All right, how can I get in touch with him? Like some of these guys, I tried my best to connect, even through my, when I became a head coach. Just all right, I'm not a quarterback guy. All right, Clint is. All right, Jay is. All right, Pat O'Hare is. All right,
Yeah.
can you talk with my guys? And so I did my best to try to connect, the old school with the new school. And since I'm not a head coach right now, waiting on things to happen, you know,
Yeah. Right.
this is my way of kind of servicing the new school, kind of the way I coached.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's so great. And I knew you weren't playing around when I saw the first episode was uploaded with Barry Wagner. I was like, okay. All right. He's not pulling any punches. He's not easing into it. He's going the GOAT immediately. And it's like when I saw you had Barry on, I was like, yes, this is what we need. Teach the kids nowadays about Barry Wagner because he was the guy. He was the
Yeah,
guy for so long. And it's like, if only the modern players knew
yeah,
how revolutionary Barry Wagner
yeah.
was. He was just so good.
You got to start the conversation out somewhere. You know what I
Right?
mean?
Yeah.
And I'm a bridge kind of between the two, and it's kind of like somebody has to do it. Not that other people can't do it, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw the opening and I just dove into it. I don't want to sit here and wait because
Mm-mm.
you wait on the concept, somebody else will come out with it, and you be like,
Yep.
man, I could have did that. And
Uh-huh.
I don't want to wait because again, so much of us wanted to do the same thing,
Yeah.
but everybody was kind of waiting around. I don't know. Like I said, and talking to everybody, man, everybody got the same idea. You know what? I'm jumping into this thing.
Just do it. Yeah. What's the saying? You got people who make it happen. You got people who watch it happen. You got people who don't even know what's happening.
Yep, yep,
You
yep.
need people to make it happen. So yeah, I'm happy that you're making it happen, and I'm excited to see what episodes you got coming up. Um, as you continue to grow the show from here, you mentioned Sam Hernandez potentially hopping on the show here soon. What else do you have planned for the show as you continue to kind of develop it and grow it?
Right now I have different ideas, but first things first is stick with the initial goal is
Right.
to get the OGs per se.
Hmm.
We're at an age where we don't mind it. That's not an insult anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
When you first get an unk status, an
Uh-huh.
OG status, you're like, I'm not unk. I'm not. Nah, we're all at an age where
Yeah,
it's like a crown that you wear. Yeah, I'm
for
OG.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm unk.
Yeah.
So but it's like the original idea is to kind of lift up the old school and let them tell their stories and let them
Yeah.
give tips to the new generation. That way it helps these guys so they don't have to try to reinvent the wheel or go the hard way when,
Yeah.
Barry tells them a story, Jay tells them something that can help them out, and they don't go the wrong way because we already tried that.
Yeah.
It didn't work, so you don't have to do that. So all you got to
Yeah.
do is take the information we give you and run with it. You may do it
Yeah.
better than what we did, but
Yeah.
you don't have to go the hard way. And we're all at a period in our life where we're not jealous of the new school guys, the new generation. Nah, we want y'all to succeed because us is we're all still like a brotherhood.
Yeah.
So if y'all take this thing and run with it, and they're talking about how great arena football is, you know what I mean? You're our little brothers. You're our
Yeah.
nephews, whatever, and we're all in this together. So you're taking a game that we kind of, you know, did in our time trying to lift the game up, and you're taking
Yeah.
it to new heights. But we're all
For
in
sure.
together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's such rich history with arena football dating back like 30 plus years now. It's or even more than that. What is it? Nearly 40 years now. So it's crazy to think about. So it's awesome that we kind of have we have somebody that's a bit of a historian kind of capturing these stories and making sure these great names that did great things and back in the day, their legacy lives on and make sure people know about them because I think it's very important to make sure those stories and those names live on.
Definitely. There's so many guys out there like it's and you're talking before my time to my time, you're not even getting to the Tom
Yeah.
Brady's, the Tom, there's different eras.
Yeah.
There's another era before this recent one.
Yeah, there's
You
like five
know,
eras of arena football you could dissect and classify as their own distinct time periods. It's
yeah.
crazy.
So you could spend years on the time frame of my me and before, but like I
Yeah.
said, there's still that era right after that
Yeah.
2019, that era right there, the when Dozell was head coach with the Soul. There's a
Yeah.
period, there's a generation of players, Devin Wilson, those guys. There's an era right there that you could spend the next couple years on. So this thing can go on for a long time.
For sure. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that's what's exciting to me, just to see these different guys' stories, and maybe I even had a rough day that day before I had the podcast, and then talking to different guys. Everybody has different energy. So
Yeah.
when talking with them, you're like, "That's what's up," It
Yeah. Yeah.
it kind of it kind of ignites you. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
and hopefully that does the same thing for the young guys that are watching.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm excited to hear some of the stories that are told and hear some maybe never before heard stories on Arena Goat Talk. Where can people follow Arena Goat Talk and how can people consume it, whether it be watching, whether it be listening?
So on Facebook, Arena Goat Talk.
Hmm.
That's the ad. There's no extra numbers or anything like that.
Okay.
It's just the at Arena Goat Talk on Facebook, at Arena Goat Talk on Instagram, at Arena Goat Talk on YouTube.
Okay.
I'm flirting with whether I want to do TikTok with it or not.
Yeah.
Trying to, or it's all also on X, Twitter, whatever the new name
Yeah. Yeah.
is. I know it jumps around,
Yeah.
but it's hard for me to keep up with all these social media.
It's tough.
And I'm already doing that with my youth league, the ball class league. It's what you
Yeah.
call it, ball class. Like, you have classes for everything else. Well, we ball in here, so it's a ball class.
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep up with all that social media, and I have a TikTok for that. So, just trying to keep up with all that, and then you
I
add
got
Arena
you.
Goat Talk, and it's like, oh, I need to hire somebody for this.
Yeah. Need to delegate some of this work. Yeah. Well, we're going to link everything that you mentioned, all the socials and the YouTube in the description below. So if you're watching on YouTube, scroll down a little bit. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, scroll down a little bit, click on the description. It's all going to be right there. So I'm excited, like I said, to see how this continues to grow and hear some of the stories that are going to be told. So, Coach Burt, really appreciate you hopping on the show today. And we'll have to stay in touch. And like I said, I can't emphasize enough how excited I am to see who you got coming on next. So I really appreciate the time.
I appreciate you having me on, and again, give me a chance to kind of tell my story and kind of put out there, what I'm doing. Yeah,
Yeah,
again, I appreciate you having me on and it giving me that platform to talk.
absolutely. The goat talk for the goat talk. So,
Again, I appreciate you.
all right, we'll talk soon.
All right, sounds good.
Massive thank you again to Coach EJ Burt for hopping on the show and talking about his football journey and the podcast. I grew up going to Orlando Predators games at the TD Waterhouse in Orlando. And when EJ Burt made his debut as a player, I was, I think, 11 or 12 years old, and he was awesome. He was great. He was one of my favorites on there. And to think I probably went on the field, got his autograph, shook his hand when I was 11, 12 years old, and flash forward 20 years later, I'm interviewing him on the podcast about his podcast. So it's a real full circle moment for myself, and super happy that we were able to get him on. And again, go follow Arena Goat Talk, subscribe on YouTube, like the video, share it with a friend. He's got some really great guests already. I think he's only like 5 or 6 episodes in. He's got some really, really good guests from the history of arena football. So go check that out. All right, we're going to dive into AF1 Week 4. Got a couple games that took place this past weekend. First game we're going to talk about is the Billings Outlaws at the Washington Wolfpack. Billings won this game 61-23. Starting with Billings here, they're just a well-oiled machine, probably the best coach team in the entire arena football one, arguably the entire indoor and arena football sphere, with Coach Walker and Coach Hippard calling offense. And this was a fun AF1 After Dark game in Washington. It was Thursday night, so last Thursday night, and Billings had only played one game up to this point due to schedule adjustments and some of the nonsense that happened right before the season. So you kind of had a lingering thought in the back of your head, like, okay, are they going to be a little rusty? Does Washington have a chance to catch them? And the game kicked off. Washington scored first, so it gave you some pause. It gave you a, well, let's see what happens. But then the Billings offense took the field, and it was like, okay, no, they're still the Outlaws. So yeah, they immediately stomped that out, jumped out to a big lead. I think they scored 41 points in the first half and just continued to lay it on. They still got some things to clean up, which makes it even scarier, because they put what did I say, 61 points? They put 61 on the board, and they had some sloppy plays that left some points on the board, some penalties that I'm sure they want back. They could have easily repeated a 70 piece like they did in their first game. And yeah, it was a really great offensive display from the Outlaws. Braden Winkle, he looked fantastic. He went 22 for 31 for 249 yards and 6 touchdowns. He targeted Jevin Frett, wide receiver, 10 times for 114 yards and 2 touchdowns. So that offense is cooking, and they're starting to get things together, starting to get into a rhythm. And the timing could not be more perfect, because they got their first showdown with Albany this upcoming weekend. That is going to be awesome, going to be a banger. And Billings has looked very, very exciting on offense and defense. Week 1, they got toasted pretty early against Oregon. There seemed to be some miscommunications on the secondary, on the back end, but they got that stuff cleaned up. Had a pick six early in this one, and the defense was just swarming and not really letting the Washington Wolfpack passing attack really get anything going. So Billings looks great, and I don't think it's a surprise to anyone at that point, or at this point. But for Washington, like I said, they started the game off hot. They scored on their opening drive. 2 minutes into the game, they had 7 points on the board. It's like, okay, all right, Washington, let's see what you got. And they had some moments of inspiration and a couple play calls early that were really well designed, really well executed. And I was like, okay, who is this Washington team? Like, all right, I'm liking what I'm seeing. But then they just kind of reverted back to what we've known them to be over the beginning of this season, and even in last season, where some of the play calling just wasn't ideal, wasn't great. And it was like, when seeing one of these offenses take the field versus the other, it was just night and day different, just from a play calling and play design standpoint. So I think Washington would really benefit from bringing in a veteran arena football offensive coordinator. Don't know logistically how that would work, or if that's possible. Obviously not in mid this season, but I think for future seasons, just to get a veteran play caller in the mix to really take advantages of the nuance of the arena game, because they have a really great wide receiver group. They've discovered that they have their QB1 in Ed Crouch. We're running out of reasons why this offense can't be productive and compete with the best teams in the league. You got great wide receivers, great quarterback. Now you just need the schemes to really get them in a good spot to be successful. So Washington still has a little bit of work ahead of them, but they started off good in this one, but then just quickly fell apart. But Billings is a very good team, and you could make the argument that the way the second half went down was because of the strength of Billings, not necessarily taking anything away from Washington. But yeah, I think Washington they really got to get their act together, and hopefully on offense they can start scoring against these better teams because you're not going to be able to play respectfully. You're not going to be able to play Salina, Southwest Kansas, and Oregon every single week. You're going to have to play Billings. You're going to have to play Albany, and you got to find a way to show up against them. So. Yeah, Washington has their work cut out for them. Next game we're going to talk about is the Oregon Lightning at the Nashville Cats, and Nashville won this game 40-32. So Nashville was going into this game, third game of the season, third different starting quarterback, fourth different quarterback overall, and I think going into it, they were like, all right, Tyler Kolka's got to be the guy. Please, for the love of God, let him be the guy. Let him guide us to our first W of the season, and he looked great. He looked really good in this game. He was able to connect on some impressive throws downfield while also managing the game really well. He ended up going 20 for 25, 154 yards and 2 touchdowns. A really solid debut. And those numbers don't really speak to how well he played in this one. Like I said, he was a great facilitator of the offense. He was keeping things moving. Darren Arbette really busted out the bag of tricks in terms of the run game and really getting that going. Rob Jones was able to get going on some wide receiver high motion handoff type things and get into the end zone a couple of times. And I think if they can continue to be this impactful on the ground and have Kolka really be a facilitator like he was and really be efficient passing the ball, this team could cause a little bit of a ruckus towards the end of the season and if they're able to make it into the playoffs, just because that veteran experience of Coach Arbette along with some of the roster adjustments they made, they have some guys out at wide receiver. That they got a quarterback that can give them the ball. They've got a play caller that can dial it in and really drop some good schemes and call things at the right time. They look solid in this one, and I'm excited to see the direction that Nashville goes. And for Oregon, I think they took some steps in the right direction despite losing this. One of my critiques over the past couple of weeks has been Dalton Cole at quarterback takes way too many hits. I think they run the ball way too much with him, and it's a 14-week season playing roughly 10, 11, 12 games. I'm not sure exactly how many Oregon is playing, but he takes a lot of hits, and they just needed somebody to be running the ball and take some of that pressure off of him, whether it be a wide receiver on some high motion, whether it be handing off to the big running back. They needed to get somebody going that's not named Dalton Cole in the running game just to be able to preserve him a little bit. And they recently signed a wide receiver slash tight end slash big old guy. His name's Tom Butters. Great name. They signed him in the week leading up to this game, and he immediately was that guy. He had 9 carries for 28 yards, which is not a ton of yardage, but when you consider that they used him in short yardage situations, that's a pretty good clip, 3 yards per carry. And he ended up getting a touchdown as well. But again, 9 carries for 28 yards, that's 9 carries that your quarterback is not taking hits on. Every other game leading up to this, Dalton Cole was taking every single one of those hits. And so being able to get somebody else involved and make some adaptations to their offensive philosophy and get more people involved in the running game. I posted on Instagram and X about a new style, a new trend that is in the AF1 that they were able to run successfully in short yardage situations on the ground. So they also started the game throwing some short passes, throwing some screens, something that they desperately needed because they were taking lots of deep shots and it was either gain 30 or gain nothing. And that's not efficient. That's not, especially when you're not connecting on those gain 30s as much as you would think or as much as you would hope. So they started off doing some screens, quick stuff, but then they fell behind and it seems like they kind of abandoned that and was kind of going for everything all at once. So I think they're taking steps in the right direction. If they can continue to have that mindset with the running game of keep handing it to Tom Butters, hand it off to other high man motion receivers, throw some more short screens, throw some more short passes, and then take the top off and go like every now and then throw the 30-yard pass to make a big gain. This offense could be very, very deadly if they kind of mix all those things together and make it one cohesive unit. So even though they did lose, I like where they're headed as a whole on offense. Then the last game of the weekend was the Albany Firebirds going to Salina, Kansas to take on the Salina Liberty, and Albany won this game 57-27. So Albany on offense, they just keep chugging along. Albany obviously has the talent to win any game on their schedule, and they were just able to bulldoze over Salina, especially in the second half of this one. For the Firebirds, they got off to a slow start in this one. They played a little sloppy. They're seemed to be disconnected on a couple throws. There's an early fourth down where quarterback Sam Casanova threw like a hitch route, but the receiver kept going. There's just little things like that where going into halftime, it was a 21-20 game. And so it seemed like at halftime they got some things corrected, they got some things figured out, and then they just blew the doors off of Salina in the second half and were able to outscore them what? Let me do the quick math here. 36-7 in the second half, which is insane. But Sam Casanova, he went 9 for 17, 132 yards and 5 touchdowns, but four different wide receivers caught touchdowns in this one, which is super impressive and a great way to really distribute the ball to a lot of skill position players, not really hammer it in with one person in particular. There was a little bit more of an effort to run the ball. That's something I've been talking about in blogs and on previous shows. They did improve on it, but I think there's a little bit more that they can do on the ground with the talent that they have. The defense for Albany stepped up in a big way. They had 2 pick-sixes on the day. So all three phases of the game for the Firebirds were clicking. Shout out Henry Nell. He had a 50-yard field goal, which is ridiculous in arena football, just ridiculous. A 50-yarder. He was very good in this game, and the undefeated Albany Firebirds looking great as they head into their first of two back-to-back games against the Billings Outlaws. So those games are going to be must-watch. They're going to be very fun, very excited to see those. But yeah, Albany looks great. Salina, on the other hand, they still got to get things figured out at quarterback. The quarterback play is holding them back. I don't know how else to say it. On the blog that I posted on offthewallfb.com, I compared this to if you're with your buddy on a road trip. Your buddy Kevin, we'll go with Kevin. Your buddy Kevin is driving on a road trip. He hits a pothole. You're like, all right, that was avoidable. Like, why'd you hit that pot? Okay, whatever, it's fine. So he's driving again, hits another pothole. You look at him, you're like, that was very easily avoidable. Like, what are we doing here? Why are we doing this? Hits another pothole, swerves lanes, comes a little close to somebody when changing lanes, does this, does that. You stop off for gas. You think, should Kevin be driving? I don't know. But before you know it, Kevin's back in the driver's seat for the second leg of the journey, and you take off, another pothole, another near fender bender, swerves, hits the side of the road, nearly hits a deer. Like, he does all these things that makes this brand new car suddenly look beat up and a little dingy. To me, Kevin is the quarterback for Salina. Salina has a great roster, a lot of talent that they could be going places, but the quarterback's hitting every pothole along the way. 6 interceptions the first game, multiple. I think he has 4 pick-sixes through 3 games. So it's like it's hard to build that momentum and get things going as an offense, as a team, when you have negative impact at the quarterback position, which is the most important position in arena football, to be a facilitator, to make things happen. And they're just not getting enough out of that quarterback position. So I think it should be time for a change at quarterback in Salina. Will they do it? I don't know. They're 0-3 right now. They can't afford to continue to fall back any further than what they've already got. This is not an 0-3 roster. This is not a team that should be 0-3 at this point. If they had mediocre, average, middle of the pack quarterback play, you're probably looking at a 2-1 team right now. That's how poor the quarterback play has been up to this point. They did have a couple bright spots. Kerry Starks had 2 sacks on the defensive line. Malik Honeycutt at wide receiver had 8 catches for 101 yards, Ed Smith Jr. had 6 catches for 68 yards and 2 touchdowns. I would love to see them get Tracy Brooks more involved, but that just hasn't been part of the game flow for them over the first couple of games because they've been behind a lot and having to really throw the ball and bring in an extra body to block at the running back position instead of utilizing Tracy Brooks as a true running back. Um, yeah, it's frustrating for Salina, and they are capable of much more, but I think they need a change at the quarterback position, and if they don't, we're going to continue to see these same struggles that we've seen so far this year and last year. If you go back and look at the tape of the quarterback play for who's in there, so yeah, Salina, please make the right decision. Maybe they'll turn around, but based on what we're seeing so far, it's going to be tough if they continue to roll with who they got. All right, flipping over to the IFL now. We got a couple games to run through. We had the Tulsa Oilers go to Fishers, Indiana to take on the Fishers Freight in the first ever home game for the Freight. And Fishers won this game 40-29, and it was not even that close. Fishers is for real. Like I said, the first home game for the Fishers Freight, the crowd was great. The presentation was great. The field looked amazing. They were crushing it on social media before, during, after the game. Pat McAfee even gave them a shout out for the fun experience one of the guys on their show had at the game. I think they called JT Stokes a Debo Samuel. So shout out to JT Stokes for getting that comparison. That's awesome. But the Freight looked great on defense, and on offense they were just humming. They jumped out to a 33-7 lead right after halftime, which is crazy considering that Tulsa has a pretty good crew on offense. TJ Edwards at quarterback, Faison McClurg at wide receiver. And so to jump out to a 33-7 lead was pretty incredible. The defense really stepped up and was manhandling that Tulsa offensive line and really making TJ Edwards unsettled. They were able to cause some turnovers right at the goal line, which caused Tulsa to get off the field, and they were able to capitalize, run it right down the field, and make some big passing plays when they need it. Quarterback Jaya Wright looked fantastic, both through the air and on the ground. 16 for 23, 127 yards, and 2 passing touchdowns. Then 16 carries for 54 yards and 3 touchdowns rushing. So this offense was clicking. Towards in the second half, they were able to just chew up the clock and just end the game on their terms. I think Fishers had a 8-minute drive in the fourth quarter, which is over half the fourth quarter. And you kind of got the feeling that if Tulsa had a chance to get the ball back, they might be able to make something happen. But Fishers just didn't let that happen. They said, no, we're going to hold on to the ball. So really awesome home debut for Fishers. And you starting off 2-0 with the home game experience that they had. It would just look like an incredible venue, incredible atmosphere, and looking forward to seeing how they continue that. But for Tulsa, this was an absolute nightmare. They started off a little slow. They couldn't really get things going on offense. In the first half, they had 2 drives end on turnover on downs and another lost fumble on the goal line. Faison McClurg, he was definitely the bright spot of the offense, 5 catches for 40 yards and 2 touchdowns. And the Oilers were actually using backup quarterback Hassan Rogers as like a running back wide receiver hybrid in this one. Not sure if it's an injury thing that they don't have like a true running back on the roster, but if they did have like a true running back on the roster to be able to, do some runs up the middle, be a bit more of a between the tackles, just outside the tackles type of runner. It would open things up on the outside for TJ Edwards. It would open things up on the outside for the run game. So they just looked a little off with given the personnel that they had. But the story of the Tulsa Oilers so far this season is their offensive line, in my opinion. First game against San Antonio, they were getting manhandled. In this game, the Freight defensive line were having their way and really breaking things up and disrupting things. So the Tulsa O-line has to play better. Give TJ Edwards a little bit more of a fighting chance to score points. Because if you look at the first 2 games of the season, 28 points, 29 points, which is not what you would expect from an Andre Coles and TJ Edwards offense at this point, considering they posted 60, 70 multiple times last year in Frisco. So I think Tulsa will be fine if they can get this O-line stuff figured out, get the protections worked out, maybe get the ball out a little bit quicker. But the O-line is definitely something that they need to get taken care of and is going to be under the microscope for them in the coming weeks. Next game we've got is the Quad City Steamwheelers at the Iowa Barnstormers, and Quad City won this game 52-38. Going into this game, Quad City and Iowa played 3 times in 2024, and of those 3 games, the point differential was a total of 5 points across 3 games, two 2-point games and one 1-point game. So going into this, I was like, oh boy, we might be in for a nail biter. But Quad City came in and they dominated this game. They just straight up dominated it. Fantastic performance on both sides of the ball. Balanced attack on offense and on defense. They were able to come away with 5 interceptions on the day to tip the scales in their favor. Quarterback Daquan Neal shows why he's won an MVP. He had a great game going 10 for 19, 123 yards and 2 touchdowns passing. Then another 83 on the ground, including an awesome 48-yard scamper for a touchdown. That was pretty sweet. Threw it on socials, but go check that out. But Jared Ware Jr. also had 3 touchdowns on the ground, and this offense was just cooking. This was the type of game that I was looking for from Quad City to be able to establish themselves as a front runner of the Eastern Conference and of the league at this point, because they're sitting at 3-0, which is pretty impressive considering where Quad City has been as a team these past couple of seasons. So the defensive line was impressive yet again, being really disruptive and making the quarterback for Iowa throw probably before he wanted to. So this is overall a really great team win by Quad City. They probably left some points on the board, a couple missed field goals, couple fourth down opportunities that they didn't quite deliver on. So this game could have been much worse. But Quad City's sitting at 3-0, and this is just super impressive from them. But as impressive as it was for Quad City, it was equally unimpressive for Iowa. This is just a rough one that kind of undid any goodwill that they developed in their first game against Green Bay, where it looked like, all right, Iowa might be spicy, might be a little feisty bunch here. Coach Moog admitted before the season that they were going to go with more of a pocket passer. And in the past, they've gone with like the DJPs, who was like a more of a running threat first, passing second. And ultimately, what that means is they're going to live and die by the passing game. And in this game, they died by it. They ran 40 plays on offense, 35 of them were passes, which in and of itself, is not a death sentence. It's not. We saw San Diego do that a ton last year, where Nate Davis was able to, make things work and, throw the ball 30, 40 times in a game, and it was fine. But when you have a rookie quarterback and not Nate Davis, that doesn't quite work out, especially when the rookie quarterback completes less than 50% of his passes and throws 5 interceptions on the day. So I understand they were behind early and they were wanting to play catch up a little bit, but they need to have a running game and they need to establish it early and often and feed it to running back Hunter Clausen and some of the dynamic wide receivers that they have. Do some jet sweeps, do some high man motion read options. Collazo had a pretty good run, showed that he has some wheels. So I think you got to show that off to give the defense something to think about. Otherwise, you're letting the defensive line pin their ears back and just get after the quarterback. If the DBs know it's a pass, you make life a little bit easier for them. So they need a lot more balance, regardless of the score of the game moving forward, because otherwise it's looking like they're regressing to the same team that we saw last year and the year before. Next game we're going to talk about is the Arizona Rattlers at the Green Bay Blizzard. Arizona won this game 51-47, an absolute banger. You need to go to the IFL Network and watch this game. This game was incredible, absolute delight of the IFL champions last year versus the Eastern Conference runners-up from last year. First time Green Bay has played a Western Conference team in nearly 2 years, which is crazy to think about. They played nothing but Eastern Conference teams last season. But starting with Arizona, there's simply not enough praise that can be given to quarterback Dalton Snead for the way he played in this one. Just an unbelievable game that he played. 21 for 32, 269 yards, and 6 touchdowns, including the game winner to Jamal Miles with 3 seconds left on the clock. The Rattlers committed a ton of penalties that were like, how? Why? Wait, what are we doing? It was 9 penalties for 80 yards, and they've just put themselves in some really tough positions. But they were able to battle back, and they just refused to die. 4 different receivers caught touchdowns in this one, but I was really impressed with running back Ron Brown Jr. He ran the ball 7 times for 53 yards and then caught 5 passes for 73 yards, and just made a massive impact in the game to be able to keep the Rattlers in it. This is an outstanding game from the Rattlers offense to overcome some of the adversity that they faced and their own boneheaded penalties to pull off the win in a tough environment on the road. Green Bay packs out their building, especially when someone like Arizona comes to town, and it's a tough environment to win in, and they made the cross country trip and did it. But for Green Bay, they had this game in the bag. They just couldn't close it out, and that seems to be the theme with the Green Bay Blizzard, not just over the past couple of years, but for over the lifetime of the Blizzard. I was seeing some Blizzard fans posting on socials, and they were just like, "Oh, yeah, I thought we had this one, but same old Blizz. That's what we do." And it's just disheartening because they were up by 11 with 5 minutes left in this game. And they could have ended the game on their own terms. They absolutely could have, but they just couldn't get a first down when they needed it with under a minute left. They get a first down, game's over. It's a wrap. It's over. But they couldn't get a first down and gave the ball back to Arizona with 37 seconds left. When you have somebody like Dalton Snead running quarterback, that's way too much time. You give them way too much time. And they even reached a point where Arizona had a fourth down on their own side of the field. They were going to attempt a long field goal to tie it. But then Green Bay accepted a penalty to give them another shot on third down, and they picked it up on a third and long. So offensively, they failed in the final minute. Defensively, they failed in the final minute. Coaching wise, they failed in the final minute. They just couldn't hold on and couldn't find a way to win this game. And when you go back to last week against Iowa, they were up by 19 with 3 minutes left, and they only won by 5. So we're seeing a theme of in the last couple minutes, this Green Bay team is letting up some points, and it ultimately came back to bite them. When you have a team like the Rattlers who are capable of putting up points in bunches very quickly, they were able to do so. So super disappointing to see if you're a Green Bay fan. Max Mailer had a decent day, a couple touchdowns through the air, but Kemo Clark continues to impress. He had another multi-touchdown game with 2 on the ground and 1 receiving. But Green Bay's still a good team. They're going to have a good season. They just got to find ways to win these types of games, especially against one of the best teams in the league. Because last year the Eastern Conference was pretty poor, and they played nothing but the Eastern Conference, so they ended up with a 13-3 record. But it was against Iowa, like Iowa a handful of times, Quad City a handful of times, who wasn't that great. So facing somebody the caliber of Arizona coming into their building and pulling off the win, that's a game you have to win if you're Green Bay moving forward. And they'll get a chance to go to Arizona and potentially return the favor down the line. But big win for Arizona, big loss for Green Bay, and we'll see how they both go from here. Next game we're going to talk about is the Vegas Nighthawks at the Jacksonville Sharks, and Jacksonville won this game in a low-scoring affair, 36-19. Starting with Jacksonville, Jacksonville's defense is looking scary. They're looking very, very good. Heading into this game, I thought we would see explosive offenses. We've got Jerome Johnson on one side, Jimmy Robinson on the other. We've got Quentin Randolph, CJ Wyndham on one side. We've got Karan Ashley. We got Ed Vander on the other. Like, we have all these offensive weapons on each side of the ball. So I was expecting, like, all right, they're about to light it up. Let's go. That could not be further from the case. Both defenses stepped up in a big way. The Sharks defense had a great opening game against Massachusetts, but to me, was that because Massachusetts was massively underperforming, or was it because the Sharks defense was really that good? And they made the case in this game that the Sharks defense is really that good. They were able to put a muzzle on this explosive Vegas offense, and they shut them out in the second half. No points were scored in the second half with a Jerome Johnson-led offense, which is super impressive. So the Jacksonville defense had themselves quite a day. Caleb Barker had a big impact on the game scoring-wise as well. 2 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns, and he played that facilitator role that we talk about so often very, very well, getting Jimmy Robinson in the mix, getting the ball out to Karan Ashley, who's clearly Barker's favorite target to this point in the season. But the Sharks are rolling on defense, and they're controlling the game, minimizing mistakes on offense, and they're showing why they were ranked number 2 in the preseason power rankings from the IFL. But for Vegas, they were able to move the ball a little bit in this one, up and down the field, especially in the first half, but they just weren't able to punch it into the end zone. There was a particular drive in the second half where Nighthawks had the ball at the 2-yard line, and they took out Jerome Johnson, put in Antonio Wimbush to run like a wildcat formation. Why you would take out one of the most dynamic playmakers in all of indoor and arena football, who's known for his abilities to run the ball, why you would take him out for the running back. Antonio Wimbush is great. I'm not taking anything away from him, but I just don't understand why you take your reigning MVP out of the game in that situation when that is literally when he thrives. It just didn't make sense to me. And it was just an example of something where like the Sharks were stopping Vegas, but Vegas was also stopping Vegas, where they were kind of getting in their own way at times. And so it was just a frustrating game from a Vegas perspective. I'm sure it's only scoring 19 points in the first half. Continued to have some kicking woes. They brought in a new kicker, still had some issues all throughout the game. But again, the Vegas defense played pretty well in this one. They gave their offense opportunities to get back in it, but the Vegas offense has to get off to a better start. They have to play 4 quarters of quality football. Last time they played against San Diego, got off to a rough start, was able to storm back. Not necessarily the case in this one. They were shut out in the second half. So I still think they're one of the best teams in the IFL, but they're going to require 4 quarters of football on offense in order to prove that moving forward. And the last game of the IFL weekend was the California Clash. That's right, folks. The California Clash returned after a very, very exciting set of games in 2024. Super excited to see this one come to fruition and continue that series. But unfortunately, this game was very lopsided, and Bay Area walked away with this one 41-18. So Bay Area, they had a rough season opener against San Antonio, but they bounced back in a big way. Josh Jones looked like Josh Jones from last season. He ended up going 18 for 29 for 142 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air, then another 53 on the ground and a touchdown as well. And he's really starting to get back into form. And I think one of the more impressive things that I noticed throughout the game and confirmed in the box score afterwards was they were able to really distribute the ball really, really well. Tyrese Chambers had 6 catches. Isaiah McCorker had 6 catches. Josh Tomas had 4 catches. So like they were able to distribute the ball pretty evenly amongst the different wide receivers. And I was / still am a little worried about the number of carries that Josh Jones has. It's a little bit of the Dalton Cole situation that we mentioned before about he's taking a ton of hits, but they were able to ease more players into the running game. McCorker got some play in the running game. Tomas got some play in the running game. So they did a pretty good job of spreading the ball out in the running game as well. But ultimately, you can't talk about Bay Area without talking about their defense. Rob Keefe loves a good defense, and they were able to just stymie the San Diego Strike Force offense, an offense I thought was going to perform really, really well this season and potentially take it to Bay Area in this one. And they were able to just shut them down and really make life difficult. San Diego went down, scored a touchdown to open the scoring, but Bay Area pretty much put the clamps on them from there, and they just had a really good game. Tyler Watson, defensive back for Bay Area, he had a really good game yet again. He had a solid game against San Antonio, really good game in this one. He had an interception, was all over the field making pass breakups. So it helped Bay Area pounce to an early lead and hold that early lead. And Bay Area looked strong in this one, and they looked like the Bay Area from last season versus what we saw in their opening game against against San Antonio. But for San Diego, this was a rough one. Just a really rough go. Scored the opening touchdown in the game. Started to look like, all right, cool, let's get things going. But over the last 6 quarters of football for San Diego, this number blew my mind. Last 6 quarters of football, they have been outscored 71-28. And they've just looked off the entire time. I don't know what it is. In the first half of their opening game, they looked balanced. They were really able to connect on those short yardage plays where quarterback Nate Davis gets the ball immediately, gets the ball, throws it immediately, gets the ball, throws it immediately. We're seeing a little bit less of that in this game and in the second half of that first game that they played, and that passing attack just never got going, and the running game ultimately failed them in the moments where they needed a couple yards for a first down. So San Diego ultimately lives and dies with how well Nate Davis plays. And in this one, he went 11 for 26, 105 yards, a touchdown, an interception. And he just looked off. Like he wasn't really in sync with his guys on offense. And San Diego's defense did okay considering the spots they were put in and how much the offense was giving them in terms of complementary football. But they just weren't able to get a turnover on the day. And when you look at the San Diego defense from last year, they were able to get, I think, what was it, 26 interceptions in that secondary. And that's what caused them to really shift the momentum of a lot of games and really lay it on some teams was they were able to create those turnovers. And they just haven't gotten that same clip of turnover production this year up to this point. So It's one of the reasons they're sitting at 0-2, and I didn't think that San Diego would be sitting at 0-2 at this point in the season, but they did have a tough start. Vegas and Bay Area is a brutal start to the season, but hey, that's the way she goes. Like you're gonna have to play these teams again down the line. So season's far from over for the Strike Force. They have the ability to put some things together and make some things work to get out of their current slump, but they got to bust out of the slump quickly to avoid sliding even further down the standings in the West, which we know is going to be a very competitive playoff race. And they gotta get a win in the old win column very, very quickly. All right, next up, we're going to talk about the NAL. Only two games from this past weekend that we'll talk about. First game was Shreveport at Idaho. Idaho won this game in a shootout, 50-40. So both offenses were kind of struggling heading into this game. Didn't really have an identity or a good identity, I should say. And both offenses exploded in this one. I will say the stream for this was very choppy, very rough. I think this was on Right Now TV, the streaming television partner that they have in the NAL, and the stream was so bad I think they pulled it. So that's an area of opportunity for NAL to get that cleaned up with Idaho, because otherwise it was a great game. So the folks that were in the building, I know a couple folks that were physically there, able to report back. They were saying that the game itself was pretty good, pretty strong. Giovanni Sanders at quarterback had 172 passing yards, 6 passing touchdowns, and then another on the ground, so 7 touchdowns total. Massive game from him, and he was able to connect with Kyler Henson for 3 of those touchdowns. And the offense just exploded in this one. Heading like in the games previous to this, they played a pretty tough schedule up to this point, but they didn't really have like an identity that worked for them and something that seemed to really make things, like stir the drink. Like they didn't really have the ingredients or the straw that stirs the drink to be able to do all that. But this one, it looked like they had it. And, Sanders looked really, really strong in this one, and he was able to throw the ball all over the place, and then even add one on the ground as well against a Shreveport defense that's played pretty solid defense up to this point. So even more impressive that they were able to do that. But again, the identity on offense, I think they finally found something that works, and we'll see how they continue to build on this. But for Shreveport, they were very much a 4 yards in a cloud of dust, 3 yards in a cloud of dust, sometimes 2 yards in a cloud of dust. That's how diverse their playbook was heading into this game. So they ended up signing a quarterback, Guillermo Serrano. He had 223 passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns. So he was really able to open things up for the Rougarou and give them an element to that offense that they didn't really have up to this point. They think they really ran it with their quarterback, or their previous quarterback, and then Denarius Antoine. Like they were just content with running the ball up the middle, gain 2, 3, 4 yards, and we'll rinse and repeat. But having Serrano in there really spiced things up. There you go. That's for you. That's for you if you yeah. But yeah, Shreveport didn't really have much of a passing game to speak of before they went out and got Guillermo. So he was able to provide a spark to this offense and got things going through the air for them. And it'll be interesting to see if they're able to maintain this passing attack and maybe bring back some of the rushing elements that worked for them in those first couple games for a very balanced offense. And they'll need that defense to step up and not give up 50 again to have a fighting chance at getting some wins and stringing some things together in their first expansion season in the NAL. But overall, really solid game from what you could watch on the stream. So we'll have to see if the streams get better, specifically coming out of Idaho. And second game of the weekend was the Wheeling Miners at the Carolina Cobras. Wheeling won this game 48-38. So a couple high scoring games in the NAL, which is good because some of the games up to this point were very low scoring. Wheeling quarterback Grant Russell, he returned from injury, and he had a pretty good bounce back game. He had 98 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and an interception. Then he also had 43 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. So pretty impressive bounce back, 5 touchdowns total, and you could tell that the Wheeling Miners offense needed him badly. Without him, they ended up falling to Shreveport. But yeah, a great comeback game for Russell. Fred Hardgrove, he had a staggering 22 carries for 76 yards, so real workhorse for the Miners, and really helped set the tone for that Miners offense that really needed a strong showing badly and needed to get in the win column, and they did just that. But for Carolina, The roller coaster season continues. 1 week they're hot, 1 week they're not. 1 week they're hot, 1 week they're not. This week they're not, so maybe next week they'll be hot. I don't know. They're just a super inconsistent team, and it's puzzling to try to wrap the brain around. But quarterback James Summers, he finished with 85 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. And he also had 58 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns on the ground. And then Jordan Barton, he had he caught 2 touchdown passes, and I wish Tobias Taylor at running back was able to get a little bit more involved. Would have liked to see him get more intentional touches, but it seemed like they were playing catch up for a lot of this game, and maybe it just didn't work out game plan wise. But Wheeling, congrats on the first win in the NAL. And Carolina, I've said this before. I'm out. I'm in. I'm out. I'm in. I don't know where I'm at. Um, if the roller coaster streak continues, they should be good next week. They should be on the come up, but I just don't know how all that's going to work out. But Carolina has the talent to be a very quality team and make the playoffs and potentially make a run, but they got to get some things cleaned up and stomp out some of these inconsistencies to be able to string together some wins and finish this thing off with a winning record. So those are the games from this past weekend. Really, really fun set of games across all the leagues. We've got some really great matchups this upcoming weekend as well. Billings goes to Albany in the AF1 for their first of 2 back-to-back meetings. So that's going to be arguably the game of the weekend. It's going to be a very fun game to watch. In the IFL, we've got Tulsa going to Green Bay, which is going to be a great game. We've got San Diego going to Vegas, which is going to be a great game. Fisher's going to Massachusetts. We've got a ton of great games in the IFL this upcoming weekend. But then we have in the NAL, we've got Omaha facing off against Beaumont. So both teams are technically undefeated. Beaumont's only played 1 game through the first month and a half of the season due to schedule cancellations and the whole Amarillo Dusters situation. So Beaumont's 1-0. They're 1 win coming against a very good Sioux City team. Omaha is in a very interesting spot where they're 3-0 this season, and they just fired their head coach. Fired the head coach that went undefeated last year, won a championship, undefeated so far this year in the regular season, lost the preseason game, but we don't talk about it. So they ended up letting him go. And then they hired Brandon Negron, who was previously head coach in Carolina and was an assistant coach helping out this season. So he leaves Carolina, and then a few days later is announced as the head coach for the Omaha Beef mid-season. So on the coaches show for the Omaha Beef, one of the things they talked about was we're going to score a lot of points and we're going to win. Omaha's defense has been outstanding so far this season, but the offense has done barely enough to win the games. Apparently, that wasn't good enough for the Omaha Brass. So a midseason coaching change with an undefeated team, interesting. We'll see how it works out. But this is going to be a very good game. Omaha and Beaumont facing off, and the battle of the unbeatens, and it's going to be a good one. So we got battle of the unbeatens in multiple leagues. Got some really good games starting on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And is this a Sunday? Yeah, it's a Sunday. Yeah, and Sunday. So we got a 4-day weekend of indoor and arena football, which is super exciting. So it's going to be very fun. And that's the show. Thank you so much for checking it out. Appreciate you for being here. Big thanks to Coach EJ Burt for stopping in and talking about Arena Goat Talk. It means a lot that he was able to come in here and talk about that. Again, one of my favorite players growing up, and the fact that I was able to chat it up with him about his journey and about what he's doing now is awesome. So go check out Arena Goat Talk. Go subscribe on YouTube. Go follow the socials. Go do all that stuff. And while you're doing that, make sure you follow us on socials at Off the Wall FB. F as in foot, B as in ball. Off the Wall FB. We're on Instagram, X/Twitter, TikTok, Blue Sky, Threads, all the things and stuff. Go follow us on all of those. And while you're in the mood of following and liking and doing all that stuff, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it with a friend, comment your favorite game that you got coming up, whether it be Billings, Albany, whether it be Fishers, Mass, whether it be San Diego, Vegas, whether it be Omaha, Beaumont. We got lots of great games on the docket. So let me know what you think. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please make sure you're rating the show 5 stars, liking the episode, and sharing it with a friend as well. So only 24 hours in a day. The fact that you chose to spend like an hour and a half-ish, we'll go with that, here talking shop about arena football and listening to what Coach Burt has to say means a lot. So really appreciate all the love and support so far. We're looking to continue to grow this thing out. Got some cool things in the works, and continuing to build from here. So follow us on socials, like, follow, subscribe, all that stuff, and let's enjoy this upcoming weekend of football. Do you mind? Do you mind if we enjoy some arena and indoor football? I didn't think you did, but yeah, let's have ourselves a weekend. Let me know what games you're going to be watching. Come follow on socials. Join the conversation. Love chatting it up with everyone while the games are being played. Let's enjoy these games. See you on socials, and we'll see you next time.